So hello everyone and welcome to another episode of This Week in Mobile. It is Saturday, April 7th, 2018, and I'm Jean-Baptiste Sou, Principal Analyst at Atherton Research and your host. And joining me today to help me review this week's mobile news is Eric Leandri, CEO and co-founder of Quant. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Hello, happy to be here.
So where are you calling from this time, Eric?
I'm in Paris right now. So it's okay for me. Maybe it's different for you.
So how's Paris? Is it cold and rainy, or is it beautiful and sunny?
Yesterday it was beautiful and sunny, and today the weather is thinking what you want to choose.
All right. Well, here in Silicon Valley, it's rainy, so there's no, it's been 6 months like this, and hopefully we'll get some spring pretty soon. So, but before we start, tell us more about Quant.
Quant is the first and only search engine that truly protects your privacy. Unlike Google, we don't track you. We don't track you at all. You are not the subject of your search. When you search online, we don't sell your information to anyone, and we don't collect it. And Quant is safe, secure, and private. And the whole difference between Quant and DuckDuck, for example, is that we own our own infrastructure. So we guarantee everything from the firewall to your result.
Awesome. Great. So let's move on with this week's in mobile because, boy, was it busy. And we have lots to cover. The first thing I want to talk about was about Huawei. And so I was in Paris last week and for the launch of their three new devices, the P20, P20 Pro, and the Porsche Design Mate RS. And our team here in Silicon Valley got two of those devices, the P20 and the P20 Pro. And boy, they are amazing Android smartphones. And I mean, they're actually so good that we think that they're the best of 2018, better than the Galaxy S9. In terms of camera, they have three cameras instead of two. They're better battery life and even have a better AI performance. So I mean, I think Huawei did a great job with that. And I don't know. Did you have? I mean, the launch was in Paris. Were you at the launch, Eric?
I was invited, but I was not able to attend. I went to Rome for another launch of Quant and Quant Junior. But I have seen the product. I touched them, and I can even use the P20 Pro for some minutes. And I will certainly get Huawei Mate RS soon. As soon as they release it, they send one to me. And I'm phoning you with the Mate 10 Porsche design already. So I have 2 or 3 ideas of what they do in cell phones.
Right. You and you've tried several. I mean, you have many different cell phones, and obviously with Quant, you probably have to support many of the cell phones out there in the market.
All of them.
Right.
We have to support all of them, so we have to test all of them.
So what's your view on the latest, at least the latest Android smartphones, the Galaxy S9, maybe your first impression of the P20 Pro from Huawei and the others?
I will say that if you try the P20 or if you try the S9, the difference will be in some features with the camera and the power of the P20 is even a little bit better than the S9. But what is very impressive here is the fact that these kind of devices are all very high-end devices. And you are sure that you can run anything right now with that kind of devices. So the most important thing for me is the fact that in the P20 there is the Mali G72 for GPU and for neural processing. And what is really interesting for Quant or for anybody on the market is the fact that you will be able to do deep learning, machine learning on the cell phone. So, for example, you will be able to run apps like Microsoft has created an app to translate, and it works on that kind of mobile directly. So you are able to use the power of the neural processor unit to make it work. So that's quite fantastic.
Right. And do you see, and that's very different from maybe Google that is basically using AI processing, but in the cloud, not on the device itself.
The fantastic thing here is 256 gigabyte on the mobile for the Mate RS or 512 gigabyte on the mobile, GPU on the mobile and CPU on the mobile. You can do a lot of things on the mobile right now, but you can't do everything. So in all cases, you will certainly need the GPU on the cloud too. But you can think that you can process your personal data on the mobile and then send to the cloud just for very large and complicated calculations. So you can send to the cloud when you need real power. But you can, let's say, compute your own data on your mobile. That's something who will certainly change the way we see the cloud tomorrow, because in fact it will be just a complement of our mobile. And if we talk in terms of mobile, I will say that the only things who is missing right now on the mobile from Huawei, and that you can have on Samsung Note, for example, is stylus to be able to write directly, because sometimes your finger is not good enough. But right now, the speed of creating a new mobile, the increase of the power of GPU and CPU on mobile are just impressive. And the problem is you will need to buy a new mobile every 6 months.
Right. So do you think that with the S9 and the P20, do you think that now Android phones have reached the level of the Apple iPhone 10? Are we, or perhaps did they surpass iPhone 10?
It depends how you see it. The difference between Apple and the others is the fact that they control everything. They control the software, they control the hardware, they control the whole thing. So at the end of the day, when you use an Apple 10 or an Apple 8, you are sure that everything is quite optimized. Okay, I will not say the same after 2 years, because even themselves, they explain that they do strange things after 2 years. But when it's just released, everything is perfectly optimized. So if you think about using it every time, every day, and during your normal hours of work, it will be great with an Apple 10. You will have no problem at all. Then with an Android device, it depends. It depends on what kind of application you install on it. It depends of the launcher. It depends of what they have done inside of the launcher. For example, if your launcher has pre-installed Google everywhere, then it will try to use GPS, to use information from you, to collect and upload a lot of information. So at the end of the day, you will need to have a cell phone with a very huge battery to guarantee that all this collect of data who goes from your cell phone to the cloud and in the other way, let your telephone alive after 1 day, or let's say the full working hours that you will want to have it with you. So yes, in terms of specification, you have a 40 megapixel camera, for example, behind the Mate RS, and the 20 megapixel camera. You have a Kirin 970, who seems to be better than the A11, but at the end of the day, it depends of the launcher on your Android. It depends of the apps you use. It depends how the apps you are using are using your battery. So I will say that if you want something with perfectly optimized, go to Apple. If you want to run with incredible speed sometime and with incredible capabilities sometime like that new AI photo capabilities of the P20 or S9, then you can try Android. But today, the real problem is just based on the fact that you have that massive collection of data who can just decrease your use and your power and your capability of having the best of your cell phone as you can have it when you just start it.
All right, makes total sense. Let's move on to another Huawei news, and that was quite impressive as well. Is that they announced their financial results for 2017, and aside from the fact that all their everything is up to the right. I mean they've total revenue of almost $100 billion. Net profits of over 7 billion. But what struck me was that they shipped about 153 million smartphones, that totaling over $36 billion in revenue, and that's up 32% from the year before. But they did it without having any presence here in the US, which is quite amazing, and something that maybe you're you're not that familiar, because Huawei is in Europe doesn't receive the same treatment than here in the US. Here they're pretty much banned to do anything, but still they're quite successful in the world, and they've said that they're going to ship 200 million phones this year, and our estimate is that Apple will ship about 210 million. So there's, maybe this year we're going to see Huawei catching up to Apple. So I mean, what's your view? I mean, knowing that at least in terms of some of the concerns that we have here in the US about Huawei, why you or Europeans don't have the same fear about that company?
Well, the new CEO of Huawei in the US was the former CEO of Huawei in France. So I have 2 or 3 ideas of what they think, because I talked to him several times. In fact, it's not that we don't have the same fear or not. It's just based on the fact that we are an open market, and Huawei start here with the antenna for cell phones. So antennas in Europe, I will say that 80% of them are provided by Huawei. And now they arrive with servers, and now they end up with cell phones and tablets. And so we have let's say, a different way of taking care of our security, and with the National Agency for Security and in France, for example, they try to see what Huawei want to do or not, because they are like everybody, they don't want to be spy. But at the end, this is an Android phone. This is a stock Android phone, quite stock Android inside. So that means that you can spend some time trying to see if your cell phone try to get data from you. We get, for example, some information that there is an app who has been pre-installed in the US on former Huawei cell phones, not in the US, sorry, in China, from former Huawei cell phones who should have taken some contact and information about you. But it has been removed by Huawei as soon as the information has been known, and it was clearly an app from another provider. So let's say that when you have an Android phone or when you have servers from Huawei, you can control the bandwidth and what is getting out or not. So you can make a lot of tests and see if that kind of devices are well or not so well. So let's say that in Europe, we used to buy a cell phone from the US, cell phone from China, and quite the whole production of the world arrives from China. Okay, maybe controlled by Apple or others, but that arrives from that part of the world. So at the end of the day, I think it's a kind of way of being really protective in the US. In Europe, the market is more open, and so Huawei has the right to play, and I think that they should have the right to play in the US too, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of Chinese cell phones who are who are available in the US. So I perfectly understand that Huawei could be. For America could be a perfect representative of China and maybe Chinese government in the mind of Americans. But in Europe right now, you know, what is the difference for us with Cisco and server from Huawei? When you get information that Cisco can have done some things for the US, certainly, maybe Huawei does the same thing from China, but right now, if you use servers, if you control the bandwidth, if you look at everything goes out and in, I think that the market should be open.
Right. And you're right. Most of the cell phones are today are made in China. The iPhone is made in China. And there's many. I mean, Motorola is owned by a Chinese company, Lenovo. So it's Nokia is made in China.
Yeah, it's now a Chinese company too. So the difference with the iPhone is the software inside comes from Apple, and everything is controlled by Apple again. Okay, so it's different from all the others, but I don't get the differentiation between all the other Chinese cell phone and the Huawei cell phone.
And that's a great segue, Eric. So let's move on to the other main news of the past 7 days. So that was the launch of the iPad 6, the new iPad from Apple. And from what we've seen, it's pretty much like last year's iPad. It's the same design, same price at $329. Yes, a better processor. But and the support for the pen, the stylus that you were talking about. But you know, that's I mean, we thought it was quite disappointing. We you know, coming from a company like Apple that has so much resources and could have used that to be more innovative. And for that price, I mean, $329 for half of it, you can have an Amazon Fire HD10 tablet for $150, and I believe you have some Amazon devices as well. So you know, a little bit of what do you think about this new iPad 6?
I think that the improvement in the A10 will give this iPad 6 2 or 3 years of being able to run any kind of app, even 3D app. And then the pen is a good idea because you will be able. The whole idea of Apple is to say that they want to sell it for schools, right? And so they have improved and create some software to control the classroom and things like that. So I think they have spent some cash in creating softwares, and adding the stylus give them the capability to have let's say, a tablet who is now useful for students or kids at school. I really think that they just do this in that way, but the problem is you need to buy a keyboard, or it will not be as cool as that for some usage. And then you will certainly need a case to make it strong enough for kids to use it. So the price will be maybe around $400 or €400 or €450. And then the price start to be, let's say, a little bit higher than expected for school. But if you think for school, for students or for kids, I think it's a cheapest tablet with the best processor today. You can have other things for sure, but just the Chromium maybe or the Chromebook will be in competition with it. Nothing else at school, and everybody will want to have an Apple instead of a Chromebook.
Yeah, indeed, and yeah, it's exactly what my kids who are in elementary school here in Cupertino, and they what they want is the iPad, is not the Google Chromebook, unfortunately.
And we have just released, sorry for that small ads, but we just released Quant Junior with a search engine for kids. No violence and no adult content for sure, and it works as an app, and it will work super well on that Apple new tablet. So yeah, it's if you think for school kids and students, okay. But I don't know if you have tried it. The pen on that new tablet, it's not the same as on the iPad Pro.
You're saying it's not the same?
No, I'm saying that the result is when you try to use it, it's not as smooth that's on the iPad Pro. So it's okay, it's great, but it's not as cool as on the iPad Pro.
And it's not the same price too. I mean, the iPad Pro is
sure.
So, yeah. So last piece of news on the hardware side, at least here, is the ZTE, another Chinese company, launched their first. I mean, the first Android Go phone in the US, and that's at $80. I mean, so far it's unheard of. So that's a ZTE Tempo. So Android Go is kind of the low end of Android operating system for low end phones with well, again, low end hardware. That ZTE Tempo, it has a 5 megapixel camera. Now you're not talking about the 40 megapixel of the Huawei P20 Pro. It has a slow Qualcomm processor. And so what's I mean, especially in our markets, in developed markets, is there a place for or a niche for those kind of very low end phones? And have you seen, I mean, have you tried those the Android Go compared to the other Android versions?
But in your market, I will not. I don't know. What I know is in India or in the north of Europe, or where you don't have a big connectivity, or for older people, or for very let's say poor people with small usage of the cell phone. There is a huge market, and Android Go is here just to compete with KaiOS. Do you know KaiOS? KaiOS
No.
was previously it was Mozilla OS. It was Firefox OS. It has been booked by a company. They create KaiOS, and they started to make it for India, for like old Nokia style cell phone, even with touch with a real button under the touch screen. So it's really an OS to be used on the same kind of cell phone than the Android Go, and we are talking about maybe a market of 500 million cell phones. So even if it's just for 5 million people, and you imagine $80, at $80, you can have a cell phone who works. Even if you don't have all the features, you can call, you can go to internet, you can do several things. And if your phone is just a very simple if you use your cell phone with a very simple usage, and especially maybe in the US, if you don't have a 3G, 4G plan with whatever you want to use, whenever you want to use it, then as a second cell phone could be great. And it could be very useful if you want to give that to, let's say, 10 or 10,000 of your employee. If you have, for example, travel company, or if you use it, for example, to track your employee, or to help making some delivery. So there is a lot of usage for very low-end cell phones with capabilities of, for example, reading QR code. You can do a lot of things, and when it doesn't cost a lot, there is a lot of possibility now to find a niche in the market. But if you think about the world, if you think about India, if you think about Africa, then there is more than a niche. There is we are talking about 100 millions of users.
Right, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's in our markets, in the US, in Europe, especially Western Europe. I mean, that's definitely more of a niche. But you're right. I mean, kids, older people, or even companies that could just give it away, and that's. Are there any Android Go phones in Europe so far?
I haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen none of them, but there is already some KaiOS phone made by Nokia and others who are now released on the market. So, and it's funny because we were in competition with Google to be the search engine on that kind of phone, but they use their subtle way of obliging people to choose them, and but it's very interesting to see that they don't want to lose that kind of market, because really you will see we are talking about of a lot of people who will want to come back to something simple sometime.
Right. Great. So let's switch gears and talk about apps. And the first topic is there's a company called App Figures. They published some numbers about the Apple App Store, and it's from what they're saying, it seems that Apple is cleaning up the App Store, and for the first time ever, the number of apps in the App Store shrank, and for about 100,000 apps that Apple deleted, and that's mostly old apps that were not built on 64-bit architecture, that was no longer compatible with newer phones, and then there was new, recent review guidelines that those apps didn't comply with. They also got rid of virus scanning apps, and as well as some of the clones. Their apps. I mean, it's incredible that they were there. I mean, the apps that were just clones of other apps, and just bad quality apps. I mean, that's I mean, you're building apps on for the Apple App Store and Google Play. What do you think about this? I mean, this. I mean, there are. It was about time for Apple to clean up a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's great because first of all, if you create app and if you create real apps, serious apps, you want to make them, you want to update them, you want to make them better and better, right? So 90% of the apps who has been deleted there are apps who are not even good for any kind of new cell phones. So maybe the only problem with that kind of action could be for people who still have an old iOS version and an old iPhone, where some apps are available and still working, and they will not be able to use the new ones. So I will say that it's great when you remove apps who are craps. It's great when you remove apps who has let's say a very bad quality. I think it's not so cool if you remove, for example, old version of browser, for example, because you can have some browser who are not compatible with the new version of with the old version of your cell phone, right? So at the end of the day, even if everybody wants to have the new cell phone every year or every 6 months, we should find a way to make a discrimination between apps who are a version for old cell phone and apps who are craps or just apps with malware, because from time to time some apps are just there to take some of your data. And so I think that what Apple has done was great. I really think that we should have the right to get some apps for your cell phone, even if your cell phone is 2 years or 3 years old. So
No, you're absolutely right again, because I have the first generation iPad, and a lot of the apps are not compatible. A lot of the new apps are not compatible with my very old iPad, and it's true. It's frustrating. I just can't do much. I mean, it's not that I'm using it a lot. It's more of a hand me down to the kids, but it's true. I mean, aside from the browser that is included with the iPad, there's not much they can do with it.
yeah, if you want to use that browser.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's switch gear again, and let's talk about one of the app that we've seen that we thought was a great app. It's called EmoJam, and it's actually an app that creates emojis with music. And so most of the time when you receive, so it's not like the emojis, the new emojis on the iPhone 10 or the Samsung S9, Galaxy S9, where you see all those 3D gestures and so on. That EmoJam actually is working with music labels to add music. So let's say the Beatles. So I would send you an iMessage, and then you'll be able to listen to that to Yellow Submarine and with this moving emoji. So yeah, we thought it was quite innovative. It's a small startup out of LA, and yeah, it was fun. I mean, the emoji seems to be having a second life with all this the new smartphones.
The proof that when you just add a small thing to an old idea, you can make it even more fun, right? Out of it. So I really think that it's a good idea. Maybe they can add other things too. I'm sure that the next guy will start now playing with emoji, not only with visual emoji, but maybe with the sound, and maybe tomorrow with the fact that you will be able, like you see today, the 3D, then they will certainly add your voice. And so emoji at the end of the day will be very interactive.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. I mean, do you spend a lot of time with emojis?
Well, yeah, like everybody, you add some of them to your text, right?
Yeah.
But the very interesting thing at the end is now you can add your face recognition or things like that. So if you think about it, tomorrow it could be a bot inside of your emoji, so you can have some music, some discussion with it, and even answer. Your answers can be translated in emoji. So that's cool.
Yeah.
let's
All right.
add things
So
and
let's
then it's fun.
awesome. So let's end up with a more serious topic, and that's security and there's the two security companies, Kaspersky and Trend Micro. They found Android malware. So new so malware for Android is there's plenty, but those malware, those bad programs, what they do is they use the resources of your phone, the processor, to secretly mine for cryptocurrencies, it's Bitcoin and other, and so not only they do it without you knowing, but they're just using the phone, and to the point that it overheats. And there was even one of the malware that almost make the phone explode because the battery is so hot that that it bursts outside the phone. I mean, this is I mean, you've obviously you've built you've tested all those phones, you build apps yourself. I mean, security, that's really important. And how do you see security on Android versus maybe iOS? I mean, it seems that we hear about a lot of viruses and malware on Android, and not much
Sure.
on iOS.
I will say that the way to be able to be on the Apple Store, it's very more complicated than the way to be available on the Android Store. So I will say that the tests are not the same, and the security tests are really not the same. But on Android, you can say that some people use stores who are not the one delivered by Google. So the problem today is we were talking about removing 100,000 apps who are craps or not good for the new phone. That's great.
Yeah.
I think that we could remove 30% of the apps on the Android market who are there just to get your data or use your phone in a very different way of what they say they will do. So you think you download a game and you end up with something who takes your contact and all your information. And in that particular case, it's very strange because it's something who is recurrent. In November 2017, you get the same thing with Trend Micro explaining that some apps are doing cryptocurrency mining on your cell phone. And but it's not so complicated. The way they do it is they call a GS on the website of the people who wants to use your cell phone. They take the key, then they create. In fact, they are launched on your cell phone in a kind of web view who is not available on the screen. That kind of things should not be available. As soon as something is using your battery or your cell phone or your resources like crazy, you should know it.
Yeah.
But the problem of Android is 90% of the system is using your stuff like crazy to get data, to send it, to get it elsewhere. So in that particular case, they are just stupid, to go to the maximum usage of the CPU, GPU, and the battery. That's just totally stupid. But the truth is, it should be tested. it's not so complicated to see that an app starts something elsewhere, bring something there, and start inside of your cell phone to do something without being on the screen. So security should be a real concern of people who take care of stores. And the very good thing here in Europe, you have the new GDPR laws, data protection law for citizens and customers. That kind of application would have something who is absolutely out of the law, has to pay a lot if they are caught, and it will be 4% of their whole turnover. And everything that you say is not true. When you say that app is, for example, a game or a messaging system, and it does something totally different, then you can be responsible for sure. And these people are certainly hiding in countries where it's difficult to get them. But the people who provide the apps can be caught, for example, the store, if they haven't done a good job of trying to see if something is malicious, you can coax them too. So I think that in June or July, and I hope it, people start to look at customers not only like pigs who just click on apps and get something and pay for it and have no security, no guarantee of nothing. So we should think about bringing back trust in application, trust in our systems, trust in our everywhere. It's difficult. It's not simple, but there is one way is to not download what you don't know and what you don't trust, and stop clicking on apps who should be good, because if you don't see them on let's say news like your podcast, then it could be a problem. But again, Android and Apple, I will say the difference is Apple is taking care of that kind of problem. That doesn't mean it can't happen to them, but it will be very difficult in Apple to try to dig without Apple knowing it very quickly.
Awesome. Yes, and to be sure, GDPR is something that is concerning a lot of companies here in the U.S. And I can tell you that many companies, especially software and SaaS, that are collecting data, are well, they're not ready, and they sure are are having some issues to be compliant, and they're pretty very concerned about what's going to happen after June.
Wow.
And but on that note, well, that's it for this week in mobile. Thank you again, Eric, for coming.
Thank you, and sorry for my fantastic Franglish.
It's
To
great.
you.
You've been so good that you're invited to come back next week.
Thanks a lot. Have a good
thank
day.
thank you, Eric. Bye bye.